Welcome back to Offbeat Gyan. I'm Deepa Nair and this video is on the very famous novel To Kill a Mockingbird. To Kill a Mockingbird is a novel by the American novelist Harper Lee. It was published in 1960. It is an American classic that has won the Pulitzer Prize. The protagonist of To Kill a Mockingbird is Scout Finch, and she is based on the novelist Harper Lee herself. Harper Lee was born in 1926 in Monroeville, Alabama. This novel is set in the fictional county of Macomb in Alabama. Truman Capote, a fellow writer of Harper Lee, has been immortalized by the author in this novel in the form of the 8-year-old Dill, or Charles Baker Harris, as he preferred to call himself very grandly. The events in this novel are set during the period from 1933 to 1935, the year of the Great Depression. The Great Depression was a period when the whole world was going through severe economic crisis. There were massive job losses, lack of money, and the world was in a very depressing economic situation, especially United States of America. This novel is set in the deep south of the USA. Deep south or the old Confederate states or the old country refers to the states of the USA in the southern part of the United States of America that supported slavery and exploited African American men, women, and children, compelling them to work in very harsh conditions in the cotton plantations. Scout calls herself and her family as Southerners. Scout's ancestor was Simon Finch, a man who had come to America from Cornwall in Britain because of his religious beliefs. Simon had been a Methodist, and in order to escape religious persecution, he had left England and come to America. He was a fur-trapping apothecary, that means somebody who made his living by catching animals, selling their fur, and making medicines, and he became very rich with the money he earned from his trade. So he bought some land, he also bought 3 slaves, and he set up Finch's Landing. It was a homestead which consisted of a couple of houses and some land, and he gave it the name Finch's Landing. Simon Finch's successors were Atticus, Jack Finch, and Alexandra. Atticus went off to Montgomery to study law. Jack Finch, the younger brother, he went off to Boston to study medicine. Their sister, Alexandra, was the only one who remained behind at Finch's Landing. She was married and she had a son. Atticus completed his studies in law and he set up his lawyer's office in Macomb. 2 of Atticus' clients, the Haverfords, had been given the death sentence because they had refused to plead guilty. They had committed a murder in front of a number of eyewitnesses, and Atticus had pled with them. He had told them to accept their guilt, but they were very arrogant and extremely high-handed, and they refused to plead guilty, and they had been given a death sentence. This novel is narrated by 9-year-old Jean Louise Finch, or Scout Finch. Scout lives with her elder brother Jeremy, her father Atticus Finch, who is a lawyer, as I've already told you, and their middle-aged African American cook Calpurnia. Scout and Jem's mother had died of a heart attack when Scout was just 2 years old. Calpurnia had been with them since Jem was born. Calpurnia was the one who maintained discipline at home, and Atticus fully supported Calpurnia when Scout got into arguments with her. Both kids found their father very satisfactory. He played with them, he read to them, and he treated them with respect. The novel begins with Scout telling us about Jem breaking his left arm at the elbow when he was 13 years old. As usual, Dill, their friend, their neighbor, Miss Rachel Haverford's nephew, had come to Maycomb in the summer. Dill used to live in Meridian, Mississippi, and he had come for the first time that summer to his aunt's place. This was the summer when Scout was 6 years old and Jem was 10 years old. And Dill was probably 7 or 8 years old. The events that led to Jem's accident began the first time that Dill came to Maycomb during a particular summer season. Dill was a show-off, and he tells them that he had seen the Dracula film in Meridian. So Jem tells him that Maycomb theatres used to play only Jesus movies, and he was very impressed by Dill. The three of them had a great summer. They read and they performed dramas based on Tarzan, and Dill, when he got bored, he wanted to make the reclusive Boo Radley come out of the Radley place. Now, who is this Boo Radley? Boo Radley or Arthur Radley had got involved with the wrong gang, the Cunninghams, and they had created a lot of trouble in Maycomb. All this happened long before Jem was born. Jem and Scout, they tell the story to Dill. So, this gang, they used to disturb the peace, they used to use bad language, they were violent, and finally they were sent to the State Industrial School to reform their ways. And Mr. Radley, Arthur Radley's father, convinced the judge to not send Arthur to industrial school. He promised him that Arthur would not create any further trouble. Arthur Radley was then not seen again for 15 years. His father kept him confined within the house. So this created a lot of curiosity and rumors about Arthur Radley and his mental state. Everyone created stories about the reclusive Arthur Radley, and the Radley place became a terrifying house. There were many ghastly stories which were told about Arthur or Boo Radley's doings. Now, all sorts of bad things like chickens and pets being mutilated were attributed to Boo Radley. That means all this was done by Boo Radley. But eventually, it was discovered that someone else had done all these things. A man called Crazy Addie, who had drowned at Barker's Eddy. So all these rumors, they sprang up because Boo Radley or Arthur Radley never used to appear in public. He was very, very reclusive. And that is why the man and the house, both of them had acquired an aura of fear and aura of terror. The Maycomb School was just behind Radley Place, and fruits from the pecan trees in Radley Place, they used to fall on the school grounds. But children didn't eat them. Balls which were hit into Radley Yard were given up as lost because nobody bothered to enter the yard and pick it up. And African Americans would never walk in front of Radley Place at night. So, Jem was born long after all these happenings took place. And all the information that he passed on to Dill, he got it from rumors and stories which were in circulation. Now, there were two sons, Nathan and Arthur Radley. Nathan had gone off to some other town, but Arthur Radley was never again seen. So, the first summer with Dill is over and Dill returns to Meridian. Scout starts school. And when she goes to school, she has a fight with a fellow student, Walter Cunningham. Walter Cunningham is very puny compared to Scout. And Walter Cunningham and Scout are caught fighting by Jem. And Jem asks her to stop rubbing Walter's nose into the dirt. And to make up for that, Jem invites Walter home for lunch. So they go home, the three of them, and Calpurnia serves them lunch. And then Scout makes fun of Walter Cunningham's lack of manners. Walter Cunningham's family belongs to what is classified as white trash by the much better off inhabitants of Maycomb, because he belonged to a very poor family, a very impoverished white family living in Maycomb. Then they return to the school, and their teacher, Caroline Fisher, is very worried that 6-year-old Scout reads and writes so well. She reads and writes far better than the other students in the class. And she says that the school system of imparting lessons must be followed. And Scout tells her that she was taught reading by her father, Atticus Finch, and writing had been taught by Calpurnia. So anyway, they have an argument, and then another incident happens in the schoolroom. Miss Caroline is shocked when she sees a cootie or a lice crawling out of a student, Burris Ewell's hair. So there is an argument between Burris Ewell and Miss Fisher. Miss Fisher wants him to clean up himself. He looks very dirty. He looks very unclean, and his clothes are in a bad shape. His hair is overgrown. He looks very dirty. Everybody, all the other students, they try to explain to Miss Fisher that the Ewell children only attend the first day of school every year. And Burris gets into a fight with Miss Caroline, and he leaves the classroom. And the remaining children, they try to console the shocked Miss Caroline Fisher. School goes on, and the children, they find a number of secret gifts, and they wonder about them. And these gifts are placed in a tree outside the Radley place. So the children don't know who places these gifts in the tree for them. Then again, the next summer arrives. School has closed. Dill comes down from Meridian, and Dill has heard all these stories about Arthur Radley or Boo Radley from Jem. So Dill is very, very curious about Arthur Radley, and he says that he has this plan to draw out Boo Radley or Arthur Radley from the Radley place. So the children keep daring each other to enter the Radley yard and touch the house, or at least somehow or the other find a way to bring Arthur Radley out of the house. Scout sometimes joins them in the adventures, but most of the time she prefers to stay away because Atticus does not want the boys to disturb the Radleys. Atticus is a man who respects other people's privacy very much, and Atticus has always warned them not to disturb other people's privacy. So Scout and Maudie Atkinson, one of their neighbors, they talk about the Radleys. And then summer comes to an end, and it is Dill's last evening in Maycomb. And the three kids, they enter the Radley place at night. While they are walking through the yard, they sense that someone is inside the yard. And then Nathan Radley fires his gun at them. The panic-stricken children try to escape from the yard. In the melee, Jem's pants are caught in the fence. So he gives up his pants, and they run out of Radley place. They escape. And Atticus sees them because he hears the gunshot, and he comes out and he sees Jem without his pants. But somehow or the other, Dill manages to convince him that he had lost his pants in a poker game. Jem evades Atticus' queries. Soon, Dill returns to Meridian and school begins. Another summer has come to an end and school resumes. Later on, Jem tells Scout about returning to Radley Place to recover his pants. He tells that when he had gone there, he found that his pants had been carefully folded and kept on the fence. Somebody had tried to patch up the tear. Small gifts were kept inside the tree, and the kids, they leave a thank you note inside the hole in the tree where they had found the gifts. They found the gifts, but they had not been able to see Boo Radley so long. And then what happens? The hole where the gifts were used to be kept is covered with cement. So Jem confronts Nathan and asks him why the hole has been covered with cement. And Nathan says that the tree was ill and cement has been put into that hole to cure the tree. Then winter comes to Maycomb, and when winter comes, it starts snowing, and Scout looks out of the window and she is scared when she sees the snow falling. During this period, Maudie Atkinson's house catches fire, and Jem and Scout are informed by Atticus. They are woken up from their sleep, and all of them they go to watch the fire being put out by the town fire force. In the meantime, somebody puts a blanket around Scout. It's very cold, and somebody puts a blanket around Scout, and Atticus says that it is Boo Radley and that Scout can thank him later on. So after this eventful night, what happens is something even more controversial, something even more polemical happens in Maycomb. Mayella Ewell, a white woman, accuses Tom Robinson, an African American man, of raping her. Judge Taylor appoints Atticus to defend Tom Robinson. And Maycomb's racially discriminatory people, white people, they disapprove of Atticus' decision to fight for Tom Robinson. Atticus decides that he has to fight for Tom Robinson. He takes up the case and he decides to do the best that he can. Due to this, Jem and Scout face a lot of harassment at school. Comments like "nigger lover" are directed at them. When they go for Christmas to Finch's Landing, to Alexandra's place, they are berated and abused by their cousin Francis. Scout had never found Francis very interesting. She found him to be a very boring kid, and she gets into a fight with Francis. So after the Christmas celebration, while they are at Finch's Landing, they are taken to the African American church by Alexandra's African American cook, where they are warmly embraced by the congregation. Soon after this, what happens? Tom Robinson's trial is about to happen. And the night before Tom Robinson's trial, when he is in jail, a white mob comes to lynch him. Atticus is there outside the jailhouse, and he talks to the mob, tries to prevent the lynching from happening. His children join him there. Jem and Scout come there. It is a very tense situation. Atticus is the only one standing between the mob and Tom Robinson. His children are with him. He tells Jem to take Scout home. The mob refuses to go away without killing Tom Robinson. Scout begins talking to Walter about his legal problems. The crowd or the mob had been led there by Walter Cunningham Sr. So, Scout starts talking to him in a very normal tone. She talks to him about entailment, about his legal issues, and then she starts talking to him about his son, Walter Cunningham Jr. She tells him that they had got into a fight. Then Walter Cunningham had been invited home. They had had food together, and she tells Walter Cunningham Sr. to say hi from her to his son, the junior Walter Cunningham. Everybody standing there is completely astounded. Nobody knows what to do. And this little girl is talking very normally to this bloodthirsty mob. Something happens to Cunningham. Some change happens in Cunningham. He approaches Scout and he tells her that he will convey her message to his son. And he asks the other men to come away with him. And thus, Tom is saved from being murdered, from being lynched. The next day, the trial begins. Jem and Scout do not have a place to sit in the courtroom. The courtroom is crowded because it is a very controversial trial where a white advocate is defending a black convict in a rape case where the rape has been perpetrated on the white woman by a black man. So, Jem and Scout are invited to sit in the colored balcony, the balcony reserved for the African Americans, and the invitation is given to them by Reverend Sykes. The trial begins, and Atticus proves beyond doubt that Mayella and her father, Bob Ewell, had falsely accused Tom Robinson. Mayella was the one who had approached Tom because she was sexually attracted to him, and she had been caught in the act by her father, and he had been shocked to see his daughter consorting with a black man. He beat up Mayella, and to hide the shame, he had accused Tom of rape. He had also beaten up his daughter, calling her a whore. Despite all these things, despite the incriminating evidence, Tom is convicted by the all-white jury, and Tom is sent into prison. He is shot 17 times while attempting to escape, and he dies. Jem loses faith in the American legal system, and he becomes very depressed. Bob Ewell is angry with Atticus and the judge, and he vows revenge. He threatens Tom's widow. He tries to enter Judge Taylor's house, and he attacks Jem and Scout on their way back from a Halloween party. Boo Radley interferes. He saves the children, and he stabs Bob Ewell during the fight. In the fight, Jem's left arm had been broken by Bob Ewell. Boo carries the wounded Jem back to Atticus' house. Sheriff Tate arrives there, but he does not arrest Boo Radley. He insists that Ewell had died after tripping over a tree root onto his own knife. Boo sits with Scout for a while and goes back to Radley House. Scout looks at life and people from Boo's perspective. She realizes that Boo Radley is a good human being. Circumstances have isolated him from others and made him a recluse. Scout then embraces her father's advice. Scout understands Atticus' advice to be tolerant and practice empathy and sympathy. She learns that she must resist prejudice of all kinds and believe that all human beings have some goodness in them. Atticus had told her that you never really know a man until you stand in his shoes and walk around in them. So he imparts the advice that we should be tolerant, we should be free from prejudice, irrespective of the circumstances that we encounter. Thank you. With this, I conclude this video on Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird.